Welcome back, friends. And today is a great day because every day we learn more and more. It means that we become smarter and wiser as a people. And as a people, with the living in the information age, now that more information is available to us, we as a people can make decisions on what we think should be normal. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is religions and tax exemptions and how this is crippling our economies. Religions and tax exemptions. And we're going to zoom in particular today to the Jehovah's Witness religion. And that's the religion I know most about. I spent 30 years of most of my life in there. And so now that I'm on the outside, I can look at this objectively. And I can see how not only Jehovah's Witnesses, but all religions that do not contribute to help, like the government's help, helping nursing homes, helping old age, helping feed the poor, helping the food banks. If religions are not involved in that, then the religions are not helping our economies. How many people go to church? Not too many. We'll learn later that in New York State, only 29% of the population actually attend churches. That means 71% of the people don't even care. They don't even care about the churches. But yet, 30% of New York's real estate is tax exempt. Why? Because of all the churches, all the religions that like New York State. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that. But first of all, let's take a look at Jehovah's Witnesses. And in case you don't know a little bit about Jehovah's Witnesses, or a lot, there's 9 things you likely may not know. Well, their headquarters are in New York State. We're going to learn about that a little bit later. And you'll see some pictures behind me. It's all Jehovah's Witness real estate. Now, in Canada, they are one of Canada's wealthiest and least transparent charities. And how do I know that? Well, all you have to do in Canada is go to Charity Intelligent Canada, plug in Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, and their rating starts here. It's an X, F, and low. So they have, for financial transparency, not zilch. They don't give any other information out. They have an F for reporting. They do not report. And they have low demonstrated impact. So the rest doesn't matter. They just do not do anything. And we did look at the intelligence for the Fellowship of the Christian Jews of Canada, because later on in the article, we're going to talk about the Jewish Orthodox, who also are infiltrating a humongous amount of real estate in the New York State. So this is also a concern. But when I plug them up in Canada here, International Fellowship of the Christians and the Jews of Canada, well, they actually get a check mark for financial transparency. And then for reporting, they actually get an A. And for demonstrated impact, it doesn't look like they have an impact. And but it does show an actual real 73 cents to the cause. Now, when the Watchtower shows 99 cents, we know they're lying, and actually Charity Canada says they're lying, because if you go down here, they say the Watchtower does nothing, is what they're saying. And they send whatever they do, they send it all to New York. That's what Charity Canada is saying. We've read this on many of our reports. Why? Because we have a petition right below in this, if you go to the descriptions of this video link, and we're asking for support from Canadians. If you're a Canadian, just to link into that petition. It'll only take you a few moments, and just fill it out if you're in agreement. And we're asking to stop treating these religious organizations as charities, because when they're charities, they gain a lot of tax exemptions, and it's costing us as a taxpayer a lot of money. And go to the petition and you'll read all about it. So not all religions rate the same. So as we can see, the Jews, They actually fill out their forms, and they're not afraid to talk about their transparency. The Watchtower Zilch Show. Now, 9 things you don't know. Well, they do know that they're one of Canada's wealthiest religions, cults, religions, right? The wealthiest. They don't believe in military service, national anthems, or voting. When we sent our kids to school, we had to tell them not to do the anthems and all of that stuff. And it caused, in my opinion, lots of psychological problems with the kids growing up. This religion has to stop. If they want to practice a religion, fine, but we have to stop treating this like a religion of faith. This is a religion of works. And if the kids don't abide by all of this, then the parents get disciplined by the elders. Now, number 3, they don't celebrate holidays. Why? Because they believe in the pagan beliefs of the founder, Rutherford and Russell. Number 4, they don't accept blood transfusions. So they take it upon themselves, the governing body, who is the leaders. There's 8 to 10 men at a time that are leading the organization, and they deem that blood transfusions are wrong, and they have no scriptural basis for it. They shun those who go astray. So if you don't believe, they fit the bite model for cults. So they're a very high control cult religion. So if you don't abide by their rules, or if you're a critical thinker, they shun you. They disfellowship you, and you lose all of your family ties. And many of us on the outside, that's what we experience. Number 6, they limit contacts with non-Jehovah's Witnesses. So here's your big assembly. And if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you're not there. Number 7, they believe Satan is real and he's here on earth. And everything's about Satan. If you read the magazines, their Watchtower and the Awake Study articles, every article is about Satan, Satan, Satan. He's in control, and it's a lot of fear put into the people. And again, we have other videos talking about some of the PTSD problems, or complex PTSDs, and how this affects the learning and the brain of a child, because the brain's always in a fight or flight mode, because the end is always coming. And so we talk a lot about this. And then they believe in the sins require 2 witnesses. So therefore, a lot of the child molestation cases get thrown out, and they don't believe them. And they believe the end is very, very near. So they always have the Armageddon pictures showing that the end is coming. So that gives you a nutshell on Jehovah's Witnesses. We're going to move on, and we're going to show how New York's religious property tax breaks soar heavenward. And that's the title of this article. We'll put a link to this article in the descriptions below. It's a good article. I'm going to cover a little bit of it. It's quite a long article, but here's some of the key points. Religious groups' land bypass for taxation has nearly doubled to $26 billion from 1999. It goes on to talk about this, and Ramapo being a big part of this. And it says only 29% of the New Yorkers say they attend worship services weekly. Only 29% go to church. 1 in every 120 pieces of land in Ramapo is deemed clergy resident. And who's that? That's the Watchtower. The Watchtower and the Orthodox Jews. We won't blame it all on the Watchtower, but it's religion. And the Watchtower is not transparent. They do nothing to help charity. Rochester has the 3rd highest number of properties with religious tax exemptions in the state. So it talks about how New Yorkers are spending less of their time in going to church. People really don't care. We're living in a time right now, and we have to be honest. Churches are the horse and buggy days of today. They're done. We're done with them. Maybe the Amish are using horse and buggy, but we're not blaming them. We're not putting them into this category, because they're a faith-based religion. The Amish actually sends their kids out into the world, and if they want to stay there, they can. And if they want to come back, well, then they can come back. It's kind of a cool religion. But it's unlike the Hutterites. Now, we're swarmed with Hutterites up here and in the US. And my next video is going to be on the Hutterites and how they too are causing a burden on the taxpayers. We're going to talk about the Hutterites in the next video. But for now, we're talking about the Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's the same thing. It's causing the same problem. In fact, it's worse because they're buying up these big properties, and at least the Hutterites are paying taxes on the farmland, but the Jehovah's Witnesses are deeming it all biblical, and it's untaxed. So this is a huge problem. So this article has an overview about this series, and it's here's this name, Shwanagunk. Now, I knew you were going to get me on that, so here's what I did. Listen to this.
Shungum.
You get that? I'm going to turn it up. You get this?
Shungum.
I'm going to even turn it up.
Shungum.
Okay, you got that?
Shungum.
Shungum. Shungum. So it's called Shungum. And that's the area. This is the area where the Watchtower Farms is, and some of the pictures you see in the back of me. And this is where the Watchtower was burying chemicals in the farmland. And we're going to look over here about the sawmill destroyed. A fire strikes the Watchtower Farms here. This is this place that the computer nicely says it right here.
Shungum.
Shungum. Shungum. And it's there's a river, if you look at the map, that goes around that whole territory. So it's a beautiful area in New York. Like Watchtower has taken up some of the most beautiful areas of the New York state, and they don't pay taxes on any of it. Tax free, because there's some big religious organization. So here's the pictures of the fire. They're a religious organization. They do not pay taxes, but yet they pulled in 8 counties to put out this fire at Watchtower Farms. And it was, in my opinion, I'm going to put a link to this article. I'm not going to cover it all on here, but in my opinion, Watchtower should have been looking after that whole ordeal. But yet 8 counties had to get involved. It cost thousands of dollars to put that out. And here is an organization that does not contribute to the fire trucks. You know, and they even have a little bit of their own volunteer stuff on each of these Bethel farms. Yeah. But 8 counties had to put out their fire. And they don't pay taxes. They don't support these counties to do that. So how does that work? I don't, in my opinion, that has to stop. This is what this is all about. This is why people like myself get up and we talk about this, and we make petitions, and we need your support. And if you're in the US, you can support us by showing up at the Be Free 2023, and it's also in the description below. Now, we're talking, this article goes on to talk about it, and I read through it, and it's just bizarre on the amount of property that the religions own, and mostly the Jehovah's Witnesses. This was labeled Jehovah's Witnesses. This is how we found this. And all over New York State, there's so many properties. You'll see them streaming by in my background here. I just put them all up. But like in New York City alone, there's 12 billion worth of properties owned by religions, tax-free. Buffalo, 172 million. Rochester, 141 million. And Ramapo is the biggest growth ever, 265 million. Why? Well, Watchtower. And now Watchtower, we just did that last article where this doesn't include that big complex they're building that houses all those people. It's all part of that whole Watchtower movement growth, and they're getting it all tax free. And then they're winning awards, applying for awards, and getting more money out of the people. So these things, I think we have to talk about. We have to bring them to the fore. These articles here that we're looking at, they're certainly bringing them to the fore. Now, as we move through this article, we come down to Watchtower. And this is Patterson. Maybe some of you guys know Watchtower and Patterson. You've been there. I've never been there. The story it talks about, it says the story is similar to the state. Patterson is in this Putnam County town where Jehovah's Witness, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society has more than 700 acres of tax-exempt land. The town's nonprofit religions tax-exempt property values increased 29% to 155 million, though the number of parcels decreased by 3 to 25. Actually, that should be increased by 3 to 25. So it goes on to talk about some of these other properties they had. Watchtower had properties. You'll see some of the pictures right in Brooklyn. They sold that building to create a lot more capital. I got looking at that building. It had tunnels. Watchtower had basically free tunnels all the way. They were tunneling all over the place. They had cafeterias and all kinds of stuff, and they bought the dirt underground for next to nothing. They leased it, and that's what they did. Now they buried all those tunnels in. Like, it's a real Watchtower is like moles, and they'll get in and they'll just work their way in and take advantage of anything they can, and they'll eat at the roots of our economies, and pretty soon our economies start to die. And this is why we have to start standing up. And all we have to do is stop treating these religions like charities. Given they're not charities, they do nothing to help the poor. And we're going to talk about that in a bit here. Now, this article goes on to talk about, should faith-based groups receive tax breaks, and it's going on. Of course not. They should not. Well, faith-based is saying perhaps, but if they're doing something, but if they're doing nothing, no. So you read through the article, everyone's saying the same thing. It's so easy to secure religious tax exemption now. Anybody can sign up, and all you have to do is fill out the paperwork. And Watchtower has a gazillion amount of people doing their paperwork each year and going chasing after all the little grants because they're a charity. And once you're a charity, then there's all kinds of groups out there that are rooting for you and getting you all kinds of free money. So this is just eating away at the roots of our economy, and this is causing a big problem, a big burden to firefighters who can't afford to to buy a new fire truck because Watchtower owns all these farms tax free, but yet it's the communities, 8 communities, that have to come in and fight Watchtower's fires. So is that fair? No. Absolutely not. And we're the voice. We have to say something. So it talks about here, the article talks about how politicians are usually loath to pick on religious groups. They don't want to do it. The politicians don't want to get involved. The courts, we as the people have to get involved. And this is the only way that we're going to be able to do this. And this guy talks about, this tax assessor talks about what these churches and these religious organizations are causing, the havoc onto our system that is based on taxes and property land. So he goes on to talk about the burden of ballooning exemptions in Ramapo. And this started at 2015 when Watchtower moved in. How to stop the exemptions he talks about. And he says, how does a town with a struggling school district and escalating poverty manage an ever increasing mountain of exemption requests? One application at a time, he says. The exemption review process is one of the most difficult jobs, he says, I had at the town because of the sheer number of exemptions we had to review every year. And could you imagine Watchtower's exemptions they were chasing? So now the assessor in the neighborhood, he talks about the grievance process. And he said in 2015, roughly 240 nonprofit religious institutions, private schools, charities that were rejected by Ramapo's assessor's office filed grievances with the town's Board of Assessment Review to get or stay off the tax roll. That board ultimately granted full or partial exemptions to 160, most of which fixed filing errors, Tash said, and the town returned roughly 80 or 1/3 of those properties to the tax rolls by the end of 2015. But by July 1st, when the town completed its 2016 final assessment roll, more than 24 of those secured property tax breaks more than 24 of those secured property tax breaks. Those nonprofits may have fixed their paperwork and reapplied or settled with the town board after suing for the exemption. And you see, folks, Watchtower has a gazillion lawyers and they're always into suing. and they're always going after the communities. Oh, religious freedoms, religious rights. You're discriminating against us. We're the Watchtower. Everyone's picking on us. We're the ones that got persecuted in Hitler. We're the poor me. And you see, this is everyone gets sucked into this nonsense. And this guy's saying that it's tough. The courts make it tougher. And he says until recently, Ramapo officials denied exemption requests from nonprofits that did not have proper certificates of occupancy and so on and so forth. So here, Watchtower is getting really good. They're good at filing. They're good at the legal stuff. They've been into our legal systems since Russell. Judge Rutherford, well, he's not a judge, but this guy, he's a legal criminal. And if you do the research and look at some of our podcasts, we will prove to you with the history that Rutherford was a criminal, and so was Russell. So don't you guys kid yourself. This religion is no different. It's sucking what it can out of the communities, and we're allowing it. So what I'm reading here is until we get involved as a people, the courts can't do much. So we have to raise our voices and we have to talk about these things. Now, I want to show you what else Watchtower does to help out its people. And I'm going to talk about this in my other, when I talk about the Hutterites, how they look after the elderly and the infirm, which they do. And I researched this, and being in the organization for 30 years, I knew they did nothing, but based on my research, I'm just going to show you what others are saying. If you're asking about Watchtower gives Bethelites pensions, the answer is no. It's my understanding that once they're through with the Bethelites, they're through with them. Can the retired Bethelites get social assistance check from the governments? Yes, which is never enough to live on. It is so sad how these people have no money to retire on. They've spent their whole lives given to an organization that will give them nothing in return. And so glad I left with my youth. This is a person that was in it at Bethel. And here's another one. A Bethelite would only receive Social Security retirement money if he or she had to pay into the system. And if you haven't paid the taxes, you don't get a check. And that's the same in Canada. If you don't pay into CCP and all the retirement things that all of us normal taxpayers pay, you get nothing at retirement. There is some checks, but you get limited. And it's a burden upon our community. So you get, what is it says? This pays a maximum of $532 a month. That's what they would get. That's like a welfare check. And here they work their whole life. They could have been a computer technician, a really smart person at Bethel, electricians, plumbers, all those high ticket trade people making the Watchtower billionaires. And then at the end of their term, they get $532 a month. And they get kicked out onto the street. So if they don't have a backup plan, because the end's any day yet, and you have to sign a vow of poverty to go to Bethel. And it's a big privilege. So the next question is, it says in the US, this is one person we're talking. In the US, I understand that some kingdom halls added apartments where long-term circuit overseers and district overseers could retire and assist in the congregation, but they'd have to assist, right? In the US, most circuit overseers probably worked secularly before getting the nod for a CO, and thus at 62 or 65 would have Social Security. So we're talking about these traveling overseers. You see, there's nothing for them either. So there's no these are people, high up people that work for Bethel. Some might have a place, but there's no guarantee. So this is how they look after their people. These are not charities, or as we showed in our other videos, the Watchtower is a business. And it's a business running under the facade of a charity, taking in all these monies and estates from people. They're building into real estates. They're buying properties. Even some of the leaders, like Stephen Lett, has we showed that he's into over $1 million worth of properties, and you can look at some of our other videos. So, folks, I hate to disappoint you if you're a Jehovah's Witness, but the religion is not what you think it is. Now, here's what I think is happening, and I'm going to go right to Jehovah's Witnesses, their website, and I look at the Bible's my book of Bible stories. Jesus cleans out the temple. So if you look at the picture there, this is the Jehovah's Witness depiction of who Jesus would look like, perhaps. And you see he's turning over this money table here. And I pulled this up on another Jehovah's Witness article. This is the one, Jesus, your little book, Jesus, the Way, the Truth, and the Life. Yeah. And here Jesus is standing here and he's turning over the money table in the temple here. And it's the chapter's called The Temple Cleansed Again. And I'll go back to the Bible stories. Jesus cleans out the temple. So if I was reading this to my kids, I would say something like this. I'd say, Jesus really looks angry here, doesn't he? We'd look at the picture, right? Maybe I'd look at this other picture. He looks a little more angry in this one. But we go back here, read this out. Do you know why he is so angry? It is because these men at the Watchtower, they're very greedy. They're trying to make a lot of money from the people who have come here to worship God. Do you see all those young bulls? Do you see all those Watchtower and Awake magazines? And now they want us to take all their tours and come to Ramapo and spend all our money there. And they want us to build kingdom halls for free and donate all our time. Do you see all of that? Well, the men at the Watchtower, they're taking advantage of that right here at the Watchtower Temple. Do you know why? It is because the Watchtower people, they need all of these things, these magazines, these Watchtower and the Awakes. They need these sacrifices, and they also need your blood to sacrifice that to God. God's law said when an Israelite did wrong, he should make an offering to God. And there were other times too when the Israelites had to make offerings. But there could be an Israelite get birds and animals to offer to God. So you see, this is what makes Jesus angry. They were cheating the people. They were cheating, and they would be selling right here in God's temple. Well, this is what's going on. The Watchtower is taking the people's money, and they're buying real estate, and they're sinking it into property, and they're not helping the people like Jesus did. They're not helping the poor. They're not feeding people. They're not helping to retire even their own workers that have given their lives in Bethel. They're not doing that. And this is what makes Jesus angry. So he turns over the tables of men with the money and scatters their coins. And he chases them all out. So you see, folks, this is happening right now in the time that we're living. And sure, there's no Jesus walking on earth literally doing this, but this is happening through these broadcasts. There's many of us out there talking about the Watchtower, among other religions, and we're turning over the money tables because no longer are we living in the horse and buggy days. No longer do we have to have these churches. They're a thing of the past. 71% of New Yorkers no longer are bothered with churches. And the rest of the world's in the same category. So now it's a time to have a voice, friends. Now is a time to speak up, get involved, and stop giving charity. Stop allowing these groups to be classified as charity. Let them all start paying property tax, and now our fire departments are looked after, our roads are looked after, our schools are taken care of, and we're contributing equally. There's no unfairness. And for their employees, they're now businesses, and they now have to be part of the Employment Act. And in Canada here, it's part of workmen's compensation, and there's all kinds of pay-ins for retirement when you hire people. The Watchtower should be no different. As the Mormons and the Latter-day Saints, Seventh-day Adventists, all of these religious groups, the Hutterites, should all be the same. Well, folks, that's my rant for today. And until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.